Okay, welcome to this first lecture on financial mathematics. I hope that you will find this module interesting and also very practical and useful. When you look at the contents for chapter 1, I think you will recognize some, perhaps most of these topics that you've done already at school, but we will revise those, and there might be a few new concepts and definitions, I think roundabout from 1.7 or 1.8 onwards. And then we will build the basis in chapter 1. And then when we get to chapter 2, annuities, we are going to apply what we've learned in chapter 1 to do more complicated examples. And then in chapter 3, we will look at loans. Okay, so first of all, we will look at the definitions and the notation that we're going to use throughout this module. You will be familiar with these definitions. Perhaps the notation we're going to use in this module might look a little bit different to what you're used to from school. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the notation we're going to use because we will use this notation constantly throughout the course. Now, first of all, we have the present value, PV. The capital or principal amount is quite often referred to as the present value. So if you invest money, the present value is the amount of money that you invest at the beginning. Or if you are borrowing money, then the present value is the amount of money that you borrow. Then the future value, FV, is the accumulated amount when the capital and the interest is to be repaid after some time period. So the future value will be the capital amount plus the interest on the capital amount. Then the interest, capital I, is the amount of money paid by a borrower to a lender for the use of an amount of money. Or if you invest money, then the interest is the amount of money that you've earned on your investment. And we indicate this with a capital I. Then lowercase n, the duration of a loan is split into a number of interest periods. So the lowercase n we use to indicate the number of interest periods. So the interest periods can be anything. Commonly, the interest periods will be something like years or months or quarters. The interest rate, lowercase I, is the percentage of the capital which will constitute the interest for one interest period. So the interest rate can be something like 10%, or we can also write it in decimal form like 0.1. Okay, and then lastly, per annum, interest rates are calculated at regular intervals, and one common unit of measurement for an interval period is per annum or per year. Now we're going to start with simple interest. You should be familiar with simple interest. We're going to start with simple interest again because although it's a simplified version of what you can expect in the real world, it is important just to get the foundations strong, and we will build on simple interest to get to more realistic and interesting situations. Okay, so the interest, capital I, for a sum of money, the present value invested for n periods at an interest rate of I% per period is given by this first formula here. Okay, for example, if I invest, let's say 1,000 rands at an interest rate of 10%, 0.1, and I invest it for 3 years, then my interest that I've earned on this investment is equal to 300 rands. The future value of this money invested is equal to the present value, the original amount invested, plus the interest. So if we go back to our example, if I invest 1,000 rands, which is my present value, plus the interest that I've earned on that investment, which is 300 rands, then in the end I will get back 1,300 rands. That 1,300 rands is the original amount that I've invested plus the interest that I've earned on this investment. Okay, now you will see that when we do this type examples or exercises on simple interest, you are usually given 3 of the 4 quantities. So what I mean by that is we have the present value, we have the interest rate, we have the number of interest periods, and we have the future value. If you are given 3 of these 4, you will be able to calculate the 4th one. And we are going to now look at examples to illustrate this idea. So for example 1, a person requires a loan of 1,000 rands and is able to repay the loan after 2 years. Assuming a bank is willing to lend the person the 1,000 rands, but requires this person to pay an additional amount, that's the interest, when repaying the loan. Determine how much should be repaid, assuming that the agreed interest rate is 12% per annum. Okay, so we can start this example by drawing a timeline. We're going to make use of timelines quite extensively. So I indicate the starting point as T0, and then I have my first year T1 and my second year T2. My present value is the original loan, which is 1,000 rands. The interest rate here is 12% per annum, so that is 0.12. Now it's important to see here that when we indicate an interest rate, we also have to indicate the interest rate period, which in this case is per annum. And we would like to know what is the future value. If we borrow this money, this 1,000 rands for 2 years, what is the amount that needs to be repaid after 2 years? So what we have here is we have the present value, we have the interest rate, we have our N, which is 2 years, and we would like to know what the future value is. Now if we go back to our formula here, we know that the future value is equal to the present value plus the interest. So we can say that the future value is equal to the present value plus the interest. But we also know that the interest is equal to the present value times the interest rate times the number of interest periods. And we can simplify this now by taking out the present value as a mutual factor, and then we have present value or present value times 1 plus I times N. And this is the basic formula for simple interest. And we're going to make use of this formula, or we're going to start with this formula every time that we do an example for simple interest. So this is an important formula. So to get back to our example, we would like to get the future value. We know that the present value is equal to 1,000 rands. We know that the interest rate is 12% per annum, 0.12. And it's important here that my interest rate is given per annum, and my time periods, or the number of interest periods, my interest periods are also per in years. So the units must be the same. Both of them are in terms of years. So I multiply that by 2 for the 2 years, and then I get an answer of 1,240. So my future value consists of the principal amount, the original amount borrowed, which was 1,000 rands, plus the interest on that loan, and the interest part will then be the 240 rands. Okay, I think we can conclude this lecture with this example, and then in the next lecture we will look at the other examples on simple interest.